Having that person, not be afraid of conflict in a negative way, but being able to hold people accountable is the biggest thing. Throughout the whole building, Paul, staff, players, and how do you do that? And that person ultimately has to connect everybody in the building too.
Culture to me is always about the people. It's not the words, it's the people.
I've said this since OTAs. Robert Saleh is the best free agent signing that we possibly got. The juice he brings every single day, how smart he is, the way that he game plans, how he sets guys up for success, puts guys in positions to succeed, how he calls the blitzes in the right time. He's just such a good coach. And I'm so happy that we got him back this year because he is a fire for our defense and he will be a fire for us.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Music City Audible. The Tennessee Titans have hired Robert Saleh to be the newest head coach of the franchise. They become the fourth team to hire a new head coach, leaving 6 vacancies still open. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Music City Audible MCA Live, presented by Sinkers Beverages in partnership with 440 Sports. Head on over to Sinkers Beverages, grab a drink, and pop that thing open to celebrate the Robert Saleh hiring, of course, assuming you are over 21 and will drink responsibly. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin Graver. I'm your host, full-time NFL podcaster with NFL Network, Fox Sports, Underdog, and now with Odyssey. I'm joined, as I always am, by my co-host, writer extraordinaire, managing editor of Titan Size, full-time writer for the Draft Network, USA Today, and a published author of this beautiful volume, History of the Tennessee Titans, Titans of the South. It's Justin Melo. How you doing today, Justin?
Well, you could bet your butt that I'm doing well, because as I woke up this morning, I went to bed right after the national championship game, so I missed the news that the Titans agreed to terms last night on a contract to make former San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh their new head coach. And I was pumped about it because, as you know, Graver, I've been driving the bus for a couple weeks now that Robert Saleh was the best candidate for the Tennessee Titans. I am really glad that they've decided to make him their new head coach. I think Mike Borgonzi, everyone involved, will talk about it. I think they have nailed this hire. This is the ideal candidate for me to come here, Coach Saleh, and get the Titans back to where they need to be.
You know, Justin, I have come around to the point where I agree with you. And on this show today, we are going to talk about how this hiring came together, the crazy Monday that eventually led to a 5-year contract for Robert Saleh. Albert Breer reported that last night, a 5-year contract. And Breer also reported the interview lasted over 5 hours. Diana Rossini reported the Titans had always been Tennessee's top choice. So we're going to talk about how that came together. We're going to talk about what Robert Saleh brings to the Titans, both schematically as a defensive coordinator and also just the leadership, the culture, the stuff that Mike Borgonzi was talking about in that intro clip. We're going to talk about why his offensive coordinator is so important, and maybe, Justin, maybe the return of McDaniel Watch. Oh, we'll get to that. That's a tease. The dream is definitely alive and well. But let's start, Justin, with a little bit of background here, because Monday was a crazy day. I mean, it was a crazy day on Twitter. It was a crazy day. We did a live stream yesterday because we had no idea when news might be dropped, when we have to get on and talk about this. So we just said, let's go live. And I will stop down talking about the crazy day. Walmart 31 here with Walmart Man 31 with a $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much. Said, I binge watched all of his speeches that I could find. His reported charisma does not translate to on camera. They all came off as either used car salesmen or just plain boring. I totally disagree. I've started watching the Hard Knocks and I went back and watched some speeches. The speech he gives on the 4 levels of competitors, super motivating for me. I can understand why people might be cringed out or think the crow against the eagle and the eagle soaring higher is a little cringy, but honestly, I think that was a really good, well done speech and metaphor. He talks about how both sides of the ball need to be held accountable and be tough, and that the winning starts in the trenches, and the O-line will take the offense as far as it'll go. He says a lot of inspiring and motivating things to me in a way that I think players absolutely buy into.
Yeah, I'm with you. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, you saw the clip that you played at the beginning with George Kittle talking about how he motivates the team, both sides of the ball. I mean, that's a tight end saying that the defensive coordinator is the best hire we made, best free agency signing we got this offseason. The guy who's not even in the position room with him pretty much ever. So I think it speaks volumes of the impact that Robert Saleh had on that team and in that locker room. And I think that he does that through the motivational aspects.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, let me get back to where I was here. Appreciate the super chat there, but disagree with the point made. So yesterday was just crazy. The anticipation, just the palpable feeling that an impending move was on its way throughout the day yesterday. It was tangible. You could sense it. It was like something's gonna happen. And you and I were texting and we were like, you think we're safe to like put the podcast equipment away for the night? And we were like, I don't know, because they're probably going to take him out to dinner before they would announce anything, right? And like, it could be Matt Nagy. It could be Robert Saleh. Every Titans fan in the world overreacting to the fact that it might be Matt Nagy. And like, who knows? We don't know if Robert Saleh was the right choice over Matt Nagy or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's funny just because how much the fan base was praying and hoping that it wouldn't be Matt Nagy. We get the news coming out that Nagy's left the building, Saleh is in the building doing his interview, and almost at the same time we get this news that the Arizona Cardinals have scheduled a final interview for Tuesday with Robert Saleh, and every big insider implying, will he make it out of the building for Tennessee? And you're thinking, all right, if he's in the building, it could drop literally any moment at night. And then at 8:34 p.m. Central Time, the Titans tweet, we have completed interviews with 2 candidates, and it's Matt Nagy and Robert Saleh. And at that point, I was like, okay, I guess we can go to bed. Because why would they announce that they've interviewed 2 candidates and then later on announce a hiring? But I guess that is more standard. The Dolphins did the same thing with Jeff Hafley earlier in the day. So maybe that is actually the way I should have been. I guess I was looking at it wrong. Like, the fact that they completed the interviews means the announcement could happen at any moment. Well, it was 2 hours and 23 minutes later when Adam Schefter tweeted the news. The Titans plan to hire Robert Saleh. Supposed to get on that plane to Arizona. He never made it. How about that? How the turntables, Justin, on the Titans, who were used by 3 other teams and 3 other coaching candidates as the next interview that never happened. And now it's Robert Saleh with the next interview that never happened because the Titans got him. And as you said, I know this was basically your guy all along. Robert Saleh was like pretty much your top or one of your top candidates since the beginning. So I'm going to move out of the way here. That was a long setup going through the background. The floor is yours, Justin. Why should Titans fans be so excited for Robert Saleh?
Well, first, let me take it back. It's nice to see the Titans on the opposite end of this thing for once, right? As we talked about the Harbaugh, Stefanski, Jeff Hafley situations. This is normal, though, right? Like, once you get someone in the building who you want to be your head coach, you do your best to make sure he doesn't get to his next spot, because the next spot might be the last spot, right? Like, that's really tough to predict. You don't know how you could have a great meeting with someone. You could have verbal assurances, even, if you will. But if a guy gets to the next place and he vibes better with that GM, or Arthur Blank is cooking him up some ribeyes, you never know what's going to happen. You might not get to the next spot. So good to see the Titans on the opposite side of it. And I think I really, truly feel that this was the ideal one. That I don't want to get cliche faith, but for me, getting Robert Saleh in the building and then ensuring that he was not able to leave and go visit with the Arizona Cardinals, which was scheduled for today, for Tuesday. I think things happened exactly the way they were supposed to. I mean, as you said, you could go back, find a story I published 3 weeks ago on the top candidates for the Titans. I only had him number 2 to John Harbaugh, because I felt that, Harbaugh having the unique resume that he did, I understood that, every team, if I was writing that same list for any team with a vacancy, I would have had John Harbaugh at the top, not just specifically for the Titans. But my number 2 behind Harbaugh was Robert Saleh. And not that I'm going to take a victory lap, Graver, but when I talked about, when you were all in on Mike McDaniel, and I think you're on mute again.
I think you deserve to take a victory lap, to be honest, because a lot of people now are going to come out and express their support for this move because we cover the Titans and we're Titans fans. And to be honest, I'm going to be one of those people, because I'll put my hand up and say I had Saleh not in my top tier candidates, but in the one below it. And remember, we argued this last Friday, and we moved him up into the top tier. Thank goodness we did. We moved him into the top tier because you pushed for it, and our chat pushed for it. But I'll say that, like, we'll get to concerns that we have and that I have. You know, I'll legitimately express valid concerns, but you don't have to pretend that you're coming around on this hire. And I think you get all the credit for that. You deserve the victory lap. You were in on this from the very beginning.
I argued that Robert Saleh on that Friday stream was a home run hire, or would be a home run hire for the Titans. And of course, I stand by that. And so what's talking about the victory lap is when you and I were discussing Mike McDaniel, arguing Mike McDaniel, all that good stuff, I said to you, I don't see a scenario where Mike McDaniel and Mike Borgonzi are going to get in the interview room and vibe. You know, I just didn't see that being the case based on what I know about Mike Borgonzi's personality, my ability to read people and read football people and understand football personalities, I think at a high level based on the experience that I have. I just didn't see those two getting along as well as, you know, some Titans fans hoped that they would. And I think we've got that pretty confirmed, right? Because Mike McDaniel was not invited back for a second interview. He was not considered a finalist. Whereas Robert Saleh, they moved him to being a finalist before they even interviewed him virtually. You know, they felt so confident in this guy's personality based on the research that they did through their committee, right? Like the Dave Zieglers, all the great work that Dan Sagany, Reggie McKenzie, Chad Brinker, how involved all these people were collectively. They moved him up to being a finalist. They were so comfortable with his personality before even meeting him virtually. You and I had it on really good account. You had it on really good account that Robert Saleh was going to be interested in this job. You had that on good account through a source.
What I heard is that
Robert Saleh even interviewed for this job.
Yeah, I heard he wants it bad. So
I'll just come out and we'll just spill all the tea to the chat now. Yes, we have sources. I took that information to a Titan source that I have, and I mentioned, hey, I've heard that Robert Saleh really wants this job. And of course, that source who I took it to didn't, say it wasn't going to tip his hand much to me, but did say, I could see it. I think that'd be a really good fit between our organization and Robert Saleh. And I just saw this coming a mile away, that when Robert Saleh would get in the interview room with Mike Borgonzi and company, that they would just hit it off. And clearly they did. The Titans did the smart thing. They prevented Robert Saleh from leaving, getting on a plane to meet with another team. I'll be honest with you. With John Harbaugh, they would have probably tried to do the same. But I never thought Kevin Stefanski was the right fit here. I don't think that would have happened between the Titans and Kevin Stefanski. I don't know that it would have happened with Jeff Hafley either. I think they would have liked him. I don't know that they would have loved him in the way that they love Robert Saleh. And I think this is the right hire for this organization. I think he's going to be totally aligned with Mike Borgonzi. I can't wait to hear more details about how the meeting between them went, because I have no doubt that they vibed really well. And I've got some things to say about Robert Saleh's side of this, besides the Mike Borgonzi side. But we've got a bunch of super chat tips that I want to get to. Let's
pause for a second, get to some of those. We got F. Hobick, $5 chat, says, Cedric Gray all-pro season incoming. Hey, I mean, Cedric Gray could be his Fred Warner. Why not? I think part of that fit. Part of the appeal of wanting this job has got to be a few pieces, and those pieces are probably Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons first and foremost. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Robert Saleh wasn't, excited to coach Cedric Gray.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think Robert Saleh is going to be really excited to have an all-pro, a starter at inside linebacker who was like top 10 in tackles this year, right? That's one of the key elements to that Robert Saleh defense, is having a linebacker that could fly around the field. So he's going to be pumped about that. We've got another super chat tip here to get to from X20Chris08X. I told a 49ers fan in November, and I'm going to capitalize, in November the way he did, I was watching more of those games because Saleh was my number one candidate, not knowing Harbaugh was available. McDaniel OC? Listen, Chris, you hit the nail on the head just like I did. I think Robert Saleh was a great candidate for the Tennessee Titans, dating back to October, November, when we knew this job was available. I'm sure Graver and I are going to talk a lot about McDaniel Watch as we get to the Mike McDaniel offensive coordinator possibility. Thank you so much for the super chat, and thank you so much for the comment, because you hit the nail on the head with it.
Yeah, all right, I'm going to move us on here in this rundown that we have, because we do have a rundown for this show, which is, not quite the norm for a live show, folks, but there was some drama. There was some drama that went down, and Justin, you slept through this drama, so I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about or if you've caught up yet, but right after the hiring was announced, Teron Davenport, I'm not trying to throw TD under the bus because we'll talk about everything that happened, but Teron Davenport put in a story that Adam Schefter tweeted that Mike Borgonzi was leaning towards hiring Matt Nagy until ownership encouraged him to go with Robert Saleh, which is a pretty eye-opening thing. He immediately deletes that and corrects the article, issues a tweet clarifying that what really happened was Mike Borgonzi went into the Robert Saleh interview leaning Matt Nagy, but Robert Saleh was able to sway him over to wanting to hire him. But he also was sure to mention and include that it wasn't just Borgonzi that he swayed, he also swayed the entire committee. So I'm reading between the lines. I'm pretty curious to know. Now, did Amy step in and say, here's what I don't think. I don't think Mike said, all right, I want to hire Matt Nagy. And Amy said, you can't, because the fan base is going to revolt and I can't have that. You must hire the other guy. I don't think it went that extreme, but I would not be surprised if there was all right, who do we like? We got Matt, we got Robert. I don't know. I kind of like Matt. You go around the room. I don't know. Matt's your best friend. I kind of like Robert. I kind of like Robert. I kind of like Robert. And then Amy look, Mike, if you want to hire Matt, it's your job. You're tying yourself to him. And if it totally comes up bust, then it's over. But it's your hire, so I'll support it. You know that you're going to be way behind on the PR front. You're going to have to deal with all the backlash. You're going to have to go up to that podium next week or whenever this week and tell the fans why you hired the guy that none of them wanted you to hire. And if you want to do all of that, then you can go ahead and hire him.
I'm not willing to go that far. I think, with TD putting that in the story, then quickly deleting it, I'll be honest. I mean, it's not a great look, right? It's a pretty bold thing to put in a story and then wipe out almost immediately, right? That's not, and he'll know that, and he's a pro, and I think he understands that. But Paul Kowarski immediately came out and called it BS. So that is not true at all. That is not what happened. And listen, we're obviously speculating a little bit, but from the moment that Mike Borgonzi got this job and all the Matt Nagy stuff, I had a hard time believing that he would just make the buddy hire. I think he's got more integrity than that. I think he's a smarter football mind than that. And I have faith in his ability to look at these two candidates and just come to the best decision, right? And I truly believe that that's what happened, right? That Mike Borgonzi interviewed these candidates. And yes, they've got a committee. They go around the room, all that good stuff, and came to the best decision. And listen, maybe I'm inserting some of my bias into this, but I have a hard time seeing anyone being able to sit in an interview room with Robert Saleh and Matt Nagy and come away with Matt Nagy as the better candidate of the two. So I am putting my belief that Mike Borgonzi just simply made the wise, smart decision, that he looked at the two candidates fairly, removed his bias from the observation, and said, hey, I am going with who I believe is the better candidate here. And listen, Paul brought up a really good example a couple days ago that we did not discuss on this show. He included in one of his stories, PK did. And kudos to him. He talked about how everyone is just assuming they're going to hire Matt Nagy because Mike Borgonzi is his friend. Okay, I don't even know if you know this or saw this, Graver. But how about when Chad Brinker was hiring a GM, okay, just a year ago? We know Chad Brinker. Who else was even in those meetings? Dave Ziegler wasn't there yet, obviously. Reggie McKenzie wasn't there. They didn't have a GM. Chad Brinker, who had all the power in that order, had pretty much full autonomy to go make the GM hire, right? He interviewed one of his best friends one of his colleagues for that job in Packers exec John Eric Sullivan. And what did Chad Brinker do in that situation? He had to make the difficult call to one of his buddies and say, hey, I've identified a better candidate for this job. We're going with Mike Borgonzi. John Eric Sullivan was a great candidate. He just got the GM job in Miami. Okay.
I thought about this, Justin. What if he had hired John Eric Sullivan this time last year?
Jeff
Would
Hafley
the Titans
would probably be the head coach of the Titans? Yeah, almost certainly. And
it's
nothing
great
wrong
because
with that.
we're going to get, I don't know, I mean, we're going to get a essential one-to-one comparison with watching how the Dolphins build the team and how competitive they can quickly be or whatever, and watching the Titans do it, because if Brinker had hired JES, we'd like, that's what's playing out in Miami now. We're going to get to like see if he made the right choice, basically.
So, like, Chad Brinker did the difficult thing and informed one of his buddies, I've got a better candidate for the job. And Paul Kuharsky said, why can't you envision Mike Borgonzi eventually doing the same thing and coming to the same conclusion, knowing that his top confidant, his right-hand man, is someone who we know is capable of doing the same because he did it a year ago. Yeah. And I'm tipping the cap to PK because, in my opinion, my read of the situation is it's exactly what happened. There was not a Game of Thrones-like meeting where I want Nagy. No, you can't hire Nagy. I believe that Mike Borgonzi has the football character to make the best decision for the team, at least in his eyes, right? And remove his bias and make what he believes is the best decision. And we know that the other people in that room are capable of doing the same because we have hard evidence of it. And I think that's what happened. I think Mike Borgonzi said, hey, I love Matt Nagy, but I can't, I've got to be honest with myself. Robert Saleh is the best candidate for the job. We're going to go ahead and hire who I think had the best interview. Yeah,
let's look at a couple more super chats in here. Walmart man again. Oh. You just know Simmons is hyped. Simmons tweeted the eye emojis. Tavondre Sweat put on his Instagram story the Liam Coen versus Robert Saleh midfield altercation. So it seems like the defensive players are hyped. You knew they would be. And Woodrin the Pooty 696 $5. Some of Nashville sports media are extra ridiculous. That's why I am all MCM diet, baby. Like PK and Freeze are fighting right now. Like why? Because PK and Freeze are always fighting about something. And here's another one from Larder. Have we seen the real Saleh culture yet, given the hoops he had to jump through in New York, or will we see the real Saleh vision for a football program? Hold that thought, because we're going to come back to this. It's a great question, and we're definitely going to touch on it. I wanted to hit on something else really quick first, and that's that when you look at what's going to happen to Matt Nagy now versus what would have happened to Robert Saleh, look, we said it the entire process. We don't know who the best head coach candidates are going to be. We don't know who's going to be successful. It's literally impossible to predict this stuff. One of the hardest things in the world to do. What I do know is that if the Titans had let Robert Saleh walk out that building and hired Matt Nagy, Robert Saleh would be interviewing with the Cardinals, likely to become their next head coach right now. Cardinals fans were begging for it, and the Titans snatched their souls away. But Cardinals fans were waiting for that to happen, and it did not happen. If the Titans had now that the Titans have let Matt Nagy go into the wild, there's no team that's clamoring to go hire him. So while we don't know who the better candidate really is, and we don't know who's going to have more success, we know at least one other team was prepared to hire Robert Saleh, and we can't say the same about Matt Nagy. So I think that points to making the right choice. And I played a very short clip of this in the intro video. If you've been on the stream since the very beginning and you watched the full intro, if you haven't, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining. If you're just joining us. But I think, and I played this on the show a few days ago, sometime middle of last week, Justin, but I'm going to do it again because when you talk about, did Robert Saleh win over Mike Borgonzi in this interview? Because that's the reporting. What kinds of stuff must he have said to win him over? I'm sure he had to present a great offensive coordinator plan because that's, of utmost importance for this franchise and Cam Ward. I'm sure he had to talk about how he's grown and some of his failures. But you really, I think, connect in a room like this. People like Borgonzi and Saleh really connect on philosophy because it's not just about scheme and it's not just about your current plan for this year. It's about your overall vision for the football team and how you're going to work together to create that vision. Here is the full quote now. Robert Saleh on culture, how it was developed in San Francisco. He was asked if it felt the same to him when he came back as it did when he left for the Jets head coach job initially. And this is his answer on what is culture.
Culture to me is always about the people. It's not the words, it's the people. And I think John and Kyle have done an outstanding job staying true to the people they want in this building. That goes from coaches, staff members, I mean, everybody, including players. And I think when you bring in the type of person you want, the culture will easily form itself, if that makes sense. And I think they've done a really nice job staying disciplined to that. And that locker room was filled with people built of the right character.
I think he and Borgonzi probably really connected over that idea because that's essentially what we saw Borgonzi put into action in his first year as the GM.
And when I look at the trickle-down effect, you want to be able to see alignment between front office organization, head coach, and also that you've got players in the locker room that are ready to employ those ideas that are coming down, right? The trickle-down effect. So I've talked about how much I believe that Mike Borgonzi and Robert Saleh are going to get along throughout this entire process and why I believe he's going to be a great head coach for this organization. But I also look at what's in that room, right? You heard Robert Saleh, culture. It's the people, right? Do you think there's anyone happier, and the super chat tip earlier, think there's anyone happier than Jeffrey Simmons over this hire? This is the exact type of hire Jeffrey Simmons has been envisioning. They were asking him in week 16, for crying out loud, what do you want to see the next head coach? What was he talking about? We need someone who's going to come in here, build this culture, hold guys accountable. Jeffrey Simmons is going to love Robert Saleh, and Robert Saleh is going to love that he's got someone like Jeffrey Simmons on his expertise side of the ball, the defensive side, who he believes will help him lead that room and put the ideas, put the culture in practice, okay? And he's going to look at the offensive side of this team and say, I've got a quarterback who is maybe the Jeffrey Simmons version of the offense, a young, budding superstar, ascending franchise quarterback who is in alignment with my belief in culture, idea, thought process, from Mike Borgonzi to Robert Saleh to Cam Ward to Jeffrey Simmons, general manager, head coach, leader of the offense, leader of the defense. I believe all four are going to be rowing the boat in the same direction, and that's how you begin building culture.
I totally agree, and I think that, he's got to know something about the competitiveness that these guys have, and I mentioned it. He talked about the 4 levels of competitors on the Hard Knocks season in training camp with the New York Jets, and go find that speech on YouTube and watch it. I wanted to play a clip of it, but it's a really long speech, and one clip takes it out of context, and it's hard to really... It's not really long, but it's really long to sit here and play on our podcast, like 3 minutes long. So I would say go find that and tell me you wouldn't be motivated to put in the extra effort every single day. And I think that that's an area that he and Borgonzi probably really connected on. And like you said, it's important that the leaders at every level of the organization, from players to coaching staff to front office, are aligned. I think they are aligned. Let's talk about what Saleh actually brings to the Titans, why they believe he is the man to get them going in the right direction. And first and foremost, Justin, I know we talk a lot about culture and leadership and intangibles, and all those things are super important, don't get me wrong. But I also want to talk about the actual schematics and the actual effect that he's had on defenses. I'm just going to go back through the years. Back to 2019. The San Francisco 49ers had the number 2 overall defense. In 2020, under his coordination, the number 5 total defense. In 2021, the number 3 total defense. The New York Jets, in 2022, his first year as the head coach there, number 4 in total defense. 2023, number 3 in total defense. 2024, number 3 in total defense. And when you look at the advanced numbers on all this, here's a Benjamin Solak tweet that is a lot bigger on the screen than I imagined it would be. But here it is, full screen. Since the 2021 season, Robert Saleh's first season in New York, the Jets defense, so this was tweeted at the time of his firing. So another way to read this first sentence, now that we're in the year 2026, is from the time he was hired until the time he was fired, Robert Saleh's Jets defenses ranked first in points per drive, first in EPA per play allowed, third in success rate, despite playing the 4th most snaps over that stretch because their offense wasn't very good. Saleh never solved the QB problem, but man, he delivered on defense. And to the point about the QB problem, we'll get more into that in a second. But I read an article this morning about the Jets' dysfunction, an athletic piece, about how everything devolved Well, we'll save that for a little bit, but let's just say it's not exactly Saleh's fault that he never solved the quarterback problem. What he brings as a defensive coordinator, and this is important, Mike Garafolo tweeted this shortly after the news was announced. He plans to call plays. He intends to call plays on defense, which he did not do the first time around, and he even said that it made him feel disconnected from the game by not calling plays the first time around. I think he's talking about like in the game, during the game, when he's not thinking of the next play and thinking 3 plays ahead. He said he felt disconnected from the game. So the defensive coordinator doesn't really matter. I mean, sure, I hope they hire someone great, but like Saleh is the defensive coordinator, and I think the Titans, like you can basically put it in the bank. This Titans defense is going to be really good really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, those numbers are incredibly telling. And that defense, it fell off a cliff when he left. And this past year, by the way, which I guess is what the first year, right, where he was a non-full-time head coach for them in terms, he got fired in the middle of last season, correct? He was fired in the middle of last season?
Yeah.
Yeah, fired in the middle of last season. So how about what happened to that defense this year? They didn't have an interception all year. They're the worst defense in football. One of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my life, in all honesty, right? Like, look how quickly they fell off a cliff. When he left, like 0 interceptions, that's unbelievable. That's completely unheard of. I don't know how a ball didn't bounce into their hands. So you look at the way that defense fell off a cliff. I look at the personnel here. Like I said, I know it's got to get better, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that throughout the offseason. But the Jeffrey Simmons, the Tavondre Sweats, the Cedric Grays, I think Amani Hooker is going to be a guy that Robert Saleh is going to love in terms of the communication and getting guys organized, and what Kevin Winston Jr. Hopefully will be able to do as well at safety. Maybe the 4th overall pick, I think, feels a bit likelier. Maybe I think of one of those pass rushers at number 4 being a Robert Saleh-like guy.
You watched the game last night, I know. Look, spoiler alert, where I'm going to be in April, I don't know if it's going to be much different from where I am now. Just draft Ruben Bain and call it a day, man.
And that fit on that D-line, on a Robert Saleh coach D-line, playing that wide 9 role, Jeffrey Simmons in the middle, to like the way that those guys, I could just envision already the way that they are going to work together. If they go pass rusher at 4, and I think Bain is the best fit of the 3 now that we know who the coach is. But we'll talk a lot about Arvell Reese, David Bailey throughout the whole process. But for me, I just love that fit with Robert Saleh coaching this defense. And you're right, the defensive coordinator hire, it's Nick Holtz, right? Like it's a Nick Holtz-like hire, in all honesty, right? It's a guy who's not going to call the plays and is going to be there to support, game planning and concepts and all of that good, behind the scenes stuff. But certainly the hire we're more going to be paying attention to is the offensive coordinator.
And we will talk coordinators in a bit. We have a whole rundown for this show. So he did not already say his OC yet, JP Adams. Thanks for joining here. We'll talk coordinators and options and Mike McDaniel and all that. We'll talk about that in a second. I do want to hit more on the Jets' dysfunction. So you'd think that we would have explored this more in the lead up the last 2 weeks, but we didn't. I never went this deep down the rabbit hole. You might have, because I know you were more pro Saleh than me, but this piece reveals that Joe Douglas picked Zach Wilson, not Robert Saleh, that Woody Johnson forbid Saleh from benching Zach Wilson. He then forced Saleh to fire his offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, and then they went all in at the GM and the owner's decision on Aaron Rodgers. And in order to woo Aaron Rodgers, they promised him that he would be they didn't promise him he'd be in control, but they promised him a lot more power and influence than any player should have over any roster and coaching staff, for that matter. That's why they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Robert Saleh was set up to fail by that Jets team. The amount of dysfunction makes the Titans look like a competent, well-run organization. That's how bad it was in New York. So I think there were some things in this article too that were a little concerning. Robert Saleh got really paranoid about leaks coming out of the building to the media, and wasn't necessarily like he was starting to lose the faith of some of the players in the locker room because the offense just couldn't find its footing. I don't know if that happened in the last season, because again, he was fired 5 games into his final season there, 4th season there, and they were 2-3, and they fell off a cliff after he left. So I think the dysfunction though played such a role in the losing. The fact that they went 7-10 the season that Aaron Rodgers signed there and then tore his Achilles on the 3rd play of the season, They still finished 7-10 with like they didn't have a real quarterback like plan. Rodgers was the plan. They had to pivot last second. That's actually impressive to me that they won 7 games with that offense.
I agree.
So I look back on his time with the Jets and think, there's not been very many coaches who had a losing record in their first stop and went on to have a winning record in their next stop. It doesn't happen very often, but there are outliers. And I think when you analyze context, it's easier to find outliers. And honestly, I cannot imagine a situation that is more perfectly set up to be an outlier than Robert Saleh.
Exactly. You've got to analyze the context, and the context behind that New York Jets situation is so toxic. Put it this way. I'll break it down into simple terms, I think. If you're looking at whether or not Robert Saleh can be an outlier, you also have to realize that the situation he was in was so toxic that it was an outlier in itself, right? Like, no one should have to deal with all the toxicity that Robert Saleh had to deal with as the head coach of the New York Jets. That whole thing makes it an outlier. And listen, analyze the situation fairly. The Zach Wilson thing, listen, Joe Douglas, when he got to became the GM of the New York Jets, Joe Douglas had a good reputation, okay? He was coming from, I believe, Philadelphia Eagles front office. He was seen as like a Mike Borgazzo. This is the next guy up. And he did some good there, okay? Like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner in the same draft, Jermaine Johnson, Brees Hall. Like, he did a lot of good, okay? So Joe Douglas deserved autonomy to draft the quarterback of the future, okay? What happened? He made a mistake. He drafted the wrong guy. He drafted Zach Wilson. He tied his wagon to him, and they drafted a bust at quarterback. They're not the first organization to draft a bust quarterback. And there's nothing spectacular, in my opinion, about that situation. Nothing out of the norm. Of course, any head coach who ends up being the victim of a GM who drafts makes the wrong decision at quarterback, that happens. You're going to lose games, right? Like, it's just the reality of the situation. Where he was really put in a toxic situation is the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, okay? Having owner Woody Johnson do everything that he did that you just talked about, being forced to fire coaches so Aaron Rodgers could hire his buddy at offensive coordinator, who, by the way, was coming off one of the worst head coaching stints we've ever seen in history, okay, ever with the Denver Broncos, forcing that guy on Robert Saleh, and then dealing with the power over the roster situation, bringing in like, of course, Robert Saleh got paranoid and was worried about what was going on. He had no control over the room, potentially, because Woody Johnson told everyone in the room he's not the guy in control. The head coach is not in control. He first had a quarterback that was drafted by the GM, and maybe we don't know how much alignment was there between them, but way worse than that is he inherited a head coach, a quarterback that was forced on him, right, by the owner, and said, hey, we're going to give him all the power. Make this work. Of course it didn't go well. There isn't a head coach in the league that it would have gone well with unless they were winning immediately. But they didn't win immediately. He tore his Achilles immediately, and everything snowballed and got so much worse. So for me, Woody Johnson's a full-blown disaster. That entire situation with the Jets was disastrous, and that's why I make the decision to not hold it against Robert Saleh.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I do still think there are concerns, and we'll get to those in a minute.
Listen. I'm sorry. I want to address a comment because I've seen it here. This is the dumbest comment I've seen in the chat today. I don't want to hear about when you all complain about buddy hires. Listen, P. Kurds 6. There doesn't, just because you know someone, okay, doesn't automatically make every hire a bad buddy hire, okay? If Kyle Shanahan got fired tomorrow and Robert Saleh hired him to be his offensive coordinator, would that be a bad buddy hire? Sorry, this comment is so dumb, okay? If just unbelievable here, okay? Matt Nagy was a bad buddy hire in that negative connotation because we did not believe that Matt Nagy was the best candidate for the Tennessee Titans and deserved a second opportunity. How many teams were seriously considering Matt Nagy as their head coach? Now ask yourself this when you make this comment. How many teams are seriously want Mike McDaniel to be their offensive coordinator? A lot of them, okay? So what an outrageous comment. We know that Mike McDaniel is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, and there are a ton of teams that want to hire him to be their offensive coordinator. What a dumb thing to say. I mean, just unbelievably dumb thing to say in relation to the Buddy hire thing. A bunch of teams want Mike McDaniel to be the offensive coordinator. So it is not the same. When John Robinson, here's another example for you. Yeah, okay. When John Robinson hired Mike Vrabel to be his head coach, was that a good example of a Buddy hire or a bad example of a Buddy hire? There are good Buddy hires and there are bad Buddy hires, okay? Mike McDaniel becoming to be the offensive coordinator would be the best Buddy hire you could ever imagine. So just terrible.
Which teams want McDaniel? Well, more on this in McDaniel Watch later, but he's going to interview for the Browns head coaching job for a second time on Wednesday. He's already interviewed for the Bucs OC job, the Chargers OC job. He was in Miami, I believe, last night, although I never saw confirmed reporting on this.
In Miami? Oh.
In Miami for the national championship to meet with the Las Vegas Raiders, who were down there watching the game.
Interviewed for the Raiders head coach job in person. You missed another coordinator. Interviewed for the Eagles offensive coordinator gig. The Lions before they made a decision. So don't tell who wants McDaniel. He's still interviewing with like 6 or 7 different teams as we speak.
All right, this is a spoiler for later in the show. No more McDaniel talk. We will talk Mike McDaniel when the time is right. The time is not right. We are on What Does Robert Saleh Bring to the Titans? We just covered the schematic stuff. I love that he's going to be calling plays on defense because he's been an incredible defensive coordinator everywhere he's been in his career. So I'm in on that. I think the Titans defense is going to be great. Obviously, there are personnel issues. They need some frickin' cornerbacks. Nobody's going to argue that. But, you know, the Niners drafted Upton Stout this year, and Robert Saleh got this kid playing at a very high level very quickly. So I have no doubt that, I have a lot of faith in his ability to coordinate a defense. But it's more than that, right? It's more than what he does schematically, which is great. You don't need, but it's nice when your head coach is not just a CEO, but also providing a schematic advantage on one side of the ball or the other, especially the way we see is 2025 an indication of a future trend or a weird blip? Defense is back. You got to be able to play defense if you want to advance in the playoffs. That's what's been proven by this run here. As I say that about the head coach the Titans hired, who didn't advance more than one round in the playoffs because they gave up 41 points. Look, nobody expected the Niners team to win that game. I'm not holding that against him, but it's the other stuff, right? It's the leadership, the culture, the ability to galvanize players to follow you, to get players to play their best for you. And again, I'll reference the Hard Knocks speeches. I would go watch those if I were you, but I'll also play now. Now, if you're just joining, if you missed the opening, I'm going to play the Kittle clip again. If you already heard the Kittle clip because you're here, just sit for 22 seconds and listen to it again. George Kittle on what Robert Saleh coming back to the Niners means for them. Here it is.
I've said this since OTAs. Robert Saleh is the best free agent signing that we possibly got. The juice he brings every single day, how smart he is, the way that he game plans, how he sets guys up for success, puts guys in positions to succeed, how he calls the blitzes on the right time. He's just such a good coach. And I'm so happy that we got him back this year because he is a fire for our defense, and he will be a fire for us.
And here's one more. Fred Warner talking about Robert Saleh, how Robert Saleh became his champion essentially during the draft process and in his career.
Obviously amazingly pumped because of what I just spoke on. Nobody else had the vision for what I could be aside from him. He was the first and only guy to be like, I know that you are going to do well in our system. I have all these backers ranked. You're right there at the top with these guys. And nobody else had said that. And so for whatever reason, he saw something in me. And I tried my best to try to show him, hey.
Remember, Fred Warner was a third-round pick. Clearly, Saleh identified him, and I would expect he'll have a hand in identifying defenders the Titans are going to draft this upcoming cycle. But it's the players. His players clearly love playing for him, and I think that is so important for the head coach. Look at what's going on in Chicago with Ben Johnson. Look at what Dan Campbell's done for the Lions and how much you can tell the players absolutely love playing for their head coach. I can't wait to see the Titans' first win in 2026 and get the locker room celebration video. I think that thing's going to be so hype. It's going to remind us of what this past Bears season was like, I think. I'm pumped, and I think that he's the guy. He's the right guy to lead this culture turnaround. I just think that the way that he holds players accountable. Again, go watch Hard Knocks. He's a hard ass in a way that like might rub some people the wrong way. But with players like Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons who just want to win and will do whatever it takes to be great, they are going to love having a guy like Saleh pushing them to be their best.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you talked about what the defensive scheme and the personnel. He's going to motivate these guys. I can't wait for that first locker room speech as well. I think he's going to like a lot of the personnel that he's inheriting here on the defensive side of the ball, at least some of it. But you're right, like being able to identify, free agency fits. There'll be a ton of guys that we'll discuss at some point from his tenure with the Jets or currently with the 49ers he was with this year, both offensively and defensively, that he's going to consider. I think he'll do a great job helping support what really is a great scouting staff in Tennessee, by the way. Everyone under Mike Borgonzi, front office from the scouting staff, they've got a great group of people in there. I think he's going to do a great job understanding what he wants them to do, how he wants this defense to look, and helping them identify some of those talents, just like that clip showed that he did with Fred Warner.
Thundering Ice 22 asks, is Saleh going to run a 4-3 style defense? I think so. I think that's what he's always run with both New York and San Francisco. But he might look at the personnel. It might play like a hybrid front system. 4-3 versus 3-4 is kind of melted away into just like get your best players on the field, and it depends on the sub package and what the offensive personnel looks like. But if you had to have a base defense, I do think he's going to say it's 4-3. The number one thing I think Robert Saleh does for this team that's bigger than anything else, Justin, is he can give them what they've lacked since they lost Mike Vrabel. Since they fired Mike Vrabel, mistakenly. Sure, I'll say it now that we've come through the other side. I think we can come full circle, and all of us who said firing Vrabel was a mistake, or said it wasn't a mistake, we can admit that we were wrong. And you don't have to admit that you were wrong, because you said it was a mistake from the beginning. But what he brings most of all is an identity. This team will have an identity, because teams take on the identity and the personality of their head coach. Robert Saleh brings fire on the sideline. There's a whole YouTube compilation of him just celebrating on the sideline as his defense makes plays. Like, that's how much energy and fire this guy brings to the team. That identity, that toughness, again, in the Hard Knocks clips, you can see him talking about how important the trench play is, how the offensive line, they need the big boys up front to be bullies. And I think Robert Saleh brings that toughness, that bullying thing. The thing that would have worried you about Mike McDaniel as a head coach, I think this is the inverse of it, the opposite. This is going to be a tough team. They are going to be physical, and you need that identity in the NFL. And the Brian Callahan Titans had absolutely zero, completely devoid of any identity.
No identity, no direction. They weren't tough. They weren't hard to play against. They didn't have any advantages schematically under Brian Callahan. There wasn't one single advantage the Titans had when Brian Callahan was the head coach. Not from a leadership standpoint, motivation, not on the field, not the rule book, not schematically. And they had that under Mike Vrabel, right? And the question, and I believe they're going to have that under Robert Saleh as well. Here's a question I wanted to bring up on today's show. I was going to bring it up regardless of whether or not they made the hire or not today. We just agreed, right, that we know, like, Robert Saleh has a superpower, in my opinion. It's that he provides a defense with an advantage. He's so brilliant schematically. He's a brilliant motivator and leader. We saw it in New York. We saw it in San Francisco as well, especially when they were healthy and throughout his first stint there, right? He provides an advantage. He makes a difference. He's got a superpower, okay? As much as we were, we didn't think that Matt Nagy was a terrible candidate. You and I were both saying, we don't think he's terrible. We don't think he's as bad as the mass hysteria makes it seem. The question that I kept asking myself, I think privately, and I forgot to bring it up here, what is Matt Nagy's superpower? I do not believe that he has one. He was going to come, if he came here, we knew he wasn't going to call plays. So there was not going to be some play calling advantage that he was going to give them, that the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans, the Matt LaFleurs, the best offensive coaches give their team. That was not going to be Matt Nagy, right? Did he strike you as a brilliant in-game management coach when he was in Chicago? So that's not his superpower either. We know he was going to come here and try to focus on that and get better at that. Well, that wasn't, I don't believe that was a superpower, right? So do we believe, the 1 year sample size with Mitch Trubisky, and I'm trying to be fair here, wasn't enough for me to also say, well, I think he provides an advantage in working with young quarterbacks. Now, I don't think he's necessarily at blame. And we said this a lot, that Mitch Trubisky didn't work out, Justin Fields didn't work out. I think those are bad quarterbacks. I don't think that's necessarily Matt Nagy's fault. But I can't take that either and say, I definitely believe in Matt Nagy's ability to work with young quarterbacks. He is the right choice to come here and work with Cam Ward because I've got hard evidence of that. So no. So what does Matt Nagy hang his hat on? I don't know. I know what Robert Saleh hangs his hat on, right? It's being a motivator, a culture leader, builder, yada, yada, what he does on the defensive side of the ball, the schematic advantage that he provides. Like, I think Robert Saleh might even have more than one superpower because I think I think he commands a locker room, but he also knows how to coach a defense and give them a schematic advantage. I don't have proof that Matt Nagy could have done any of that. So for me, that's another one of the big reasons that I was very pro Robert Saleh and couldn't fully get on board with Matt Nagy.
Yeah, I think that if I had to say what Matt Nagy's superpower could be or what we think it is, it's getting the most out of young quarterbacks. But to your point, I think the sample size is too small to say that that is definitively a superpower. Now, if he'd come here and Cam Ward had been great under him, like then we can start to say he has a track record. But that never happened. It's not going to happen. Well, I should never say never. We don't know if Nagy's totally out of the mix to working for the Tennessee Titans. Well, more on that later. Let's talk quickly before we get to coordinators. We have a few more things I want to hit here. Causes for concern, or at least some things that give me a little bit of hesitation. And I mentioned this already, but his record with the Jets was pretty bad. I mean, overall record, career record, what was it, 20-36? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
That's not great. Now, I will say, if you take out the 4-12 season, the first season, the record gets a lot better. 7-10, 7-10, 2-3. That's a lot. I mean, the 4-12 season definitely brings down the average there, the win total, the win percentage, I should say. And that was the Zach Wilson season, right? So I think, as I said before, if any situation can be the outlier, this is the one. This is a situation that can be the outlier. But stuff did go south in New York. And sometimes stuff's going to go south. You know, as a guy that calls plays on the defensive side of the ball, he's always going to need to nail that offensive coordinator hire. Not only does he need to nail that hire right now with the first offensive coordinator, he's always going to be needing to nail this hire. Look what's happening in Detroit right now. They get off to a great start under Dan Campbell. He turns the team around. Offense is struggling a bit. Hires Ben Johnson. They shoot to the moon. Ben Johnson leaves for a head coaching job, and they hire John Morton. Dan Campbell has to take play calling back mid-season. Then they fire John Morton. They've now hired Drew Petzing, who a lot of people who know ball think more highly of Drew Petzing than like Cardinals fans or casual NFL fans because the Cardinals offense with Kyler Murray, people are saying it just wasn't a good fit. I don't know anything about Drew Petzing, but if I was a Lions fan, that hire would scare me. And I think that the Titans could be set up in a situation where, let's say he is able to make the dream come true. I said no more McDaniel talk. Here I go. And he brings in Mike McDaniel. How long before Mike McDaniel takes off for his second chance at being a head coach? And then you're having to replace him. And what are the odds that you can replace a genius like Mike McDaniel with somebody as good as Mike McDaniel? So your offense is almost set up to take a step back at some point in the future, unless he can go identify some super bright young mind to come in and be the next offensive coordinator. That to me is my biggest concern. Is what is his ability to nail these hires good enough? Because I think, Justin, the best way I can frame it is he's got a pretty high floor because his defense is going to be good. You know, that year Rodgers tore his ACL or his Achilles. They still went 7-10, right? I think he's always going to have that as sort of a high floor. His ceiling is going to be determined by who he hires at offensive coordinator, and that doesn't just go for this year. It goes for every year. Whether or not he can do that is super important. And some of the staff hires he made in New York, now I don't know whose influence or whose call they were, who influenced him to make certain hires. Some of the hires are eyebrow-raising, a little bit scary. Keith Carter is the O-line coach after the Titans fired Keith Carter from the O-line coach for not doing very well at it, for not being good at it.
Well,
right?
I don't know that that's fairly true, because I'm sorry, I'll cut you off for a second, because was Keith Carter not the O-line coach when this O-line was firing on all cylinders? Taylor Lewan, Ben Jones, Roger Saffold. I think Titans fans sometimes forget the job that Keith Carter did here for a long time. Near the end, when personnel fell off a cliff, no, he didn't do a good enough job replacing those guys, developing the guys that replaced them. But I think what we sometimes, what's the anti-romanticize? We forget that Keith Carter was the O-line coach of a very good O-line here. He was an asshole, right? Taylor Lewan did not like him. I think Taylor Lewan went on Busting with the Boys and badmouthed Keith Carter. And that's where a lot of Titans fans got their opinion of Keith Carter. I got news for you guys listening to this. A lot of coaches are assholes in the National Football League. A lot of them. That does not represent, does not mean that they are good at the job or bad at the job. For a long time, Keith Carter did a phenomenal job with this O-line. When he got fired, he was not doing a good enough job, and he deserved to go because the O-line fell off a cliff. But I think sometimes that Lewan comment about Keith Carter clouds Titans fans' judgment. This O-line was once really freaking good under Keith Carter.
Well, anyway, the point is I'm concerned that he won't always nail the staff hire. And I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying if we're talking about level-headed analysis, reason to be concerned, that's a reason. And the other big concern is just, can he be the outlier? Like, he's got to be the outlier for this to be successful. Can he do it? That's where I have a little bit of hesitation. But it's not a lot of hesitation. Like, I'm buying into Robert Saleh's message, and especially if he gets who I want him to get at OC. We'll see if that can become a reality. But those are my causes for concern. Do you have any? I mean, you've been all in on Robert Saleh from day one. If you don't have any, we can move right on and have the coordinator conversation.
Well, listen, yes. I mean, look, it's fair to say, as much as I've analyzed the context, it's fair to say that he went 20-36 in his first tenure, and you want to see him, get off to a better start here. And certainly the defensive side thing, anytime you hire a defensive-minded head coach, you might encounter challenges with the offensive coordinator. I loved Mike Vrabel, but he encountered challenges when he lost first Matt LaFleur and then lost Arthur Smith. Todd Downing, I do think was a mistake hire. And then he ended up going with Tim Kelly, which I won't get into it. I don't think was as big of a mistake as we reflect on it. I just think personnel wasn't very good and that wasn't a good offense. But the point is, anytime you hire a defensive-minded head coach, you're going to have some challenges when it comes to the offensive staff and keeping them if they do well. And of course, at the top of the Titans' to-do list, utmost importance is the development of Cam Ward. So, of course, hiring and trying to sustain a good offensive staff is going to be one of Robert Saleh's biggest challenges here.
Yeah, and let's move on and talk about that because Cam Ward is the future of this team as much as Saleh is. And, Saleh could be gone in 2 years and Cam Ward could still be here. Fingers crossed that we're not on that path. But just saying, if everything shakes out the way Amy Adams Strunk has made it looping. Borgonzi's firing is already scheduled for next January, and Saleh's firing is already scheduled for the January after that. Now, is this the guy that breaks the cycle? I sure hope so. Before we get into the coordinator conversation, we have another super chat to hit. Jesse Jones, 1471, thank you so much. Says, love you guys. My main source for Titans talk, opinions on heavy defensive free agency and more offensive draft or vice versa. Saleh links us to Juwan Jennings, Breece Hall, and more in free agency. Yes, we will talk about all this stuff. We're not going to get too into this today. Just because you are nice enough for the donation, I'll say I think it's more likely they go defense free agency, offense heavy draft, but I could see that also including the first pick of the draft being a defensive side of the ball.
Exactly. That's where I'm glad I didn't stop because that's the one caveat there, if you will. I think that there's a good chance at number 4 they go defense, but it's certainly important to keep investing in Cam Ward's development. The best way to do that is to go out and improve this offense, and they've got to do that through free agency and the draft. So excited to see how that looks. Thank you so much, Jesse Jones, 1471, for the super chat tip.
Yeah, and I could also see them drafting a corner too. So it's not going to be all one side of the ball or all the other either. But as we talk about Cam Ward, I want to hear Robert Saleh talk about Cam Ward because obviously the Titans played the Niners late in the season. Now, Easton Freeze was reporting in October, he predicted back in October that Robert Saleh would be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans in October. And Zach Lyons has been reporting since around the same time what we have talked about hearing in more recent days, that Robert Saleh wanted this job. So keep that in mind. Robert Saleh wanted this job and probably thought he had a good chance to get it when he went to the podium ahead of the week 15 or week 16?
16, I think. I think it was 16.
ahead of the Week 16 matchup with the Tennessee Titans, talking about their quarterback, Robert Saleh. Take a listen.
Is that about Cam Ward's game and scouting him? Have you seen improvement throughout the year of what he's been able to do?
For sure, he's improved significantly throughout the year. He's, earlier in the year, obviously his numbers weren't great, but I think his numbers have improved week in and week out. Uber talented, can make every throw. They do a really nice job. They've been in a lot of football games and they've kind of let it slip away there in the fourth quarter. But overall, I think offensively they've been moving in the right direction. They do a lot of really good things. And the quarterback, just speaking of him, he's got a lot to him.
So keep in mind, coach speak, you're always going to talk positively about your upcoming opponent because you don't want to put bulletin board material on the wall. Every coach in the league does this. It's actually one of my pet peeves, Justin, is like whenever Bill Belichick's obviously not in the league anymore, but whenever a team was about to play Bill Belichick, people in the press would ask about his upcoming opponent, and he would talk the most glowing, flowery thing he could say about his upcoming opponent. And then someone who covers that opponent would tweet it, Bill Belichick talking about his thoughts on this young quarterback. He called him incredible and amazing and awesome. And it's like a fan base trying to convince themselves that quarterback's not a bust. It happens a lot. That said, I think Saleh was also thinking about his potential candidacy in Tennessee when he said this. And I think he wouldn't have wanted this job as badly as he did if he didn't have belief in Cam Ward already.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm glad you said that because I mentioned something earlier. I let it skip my mind and I wasn't able to get to it. But from Robert Saleh's perspective, wanting this job, and I do think that Cam Ward had a lot to do with it. Think about this. He knows that you probably don't get a third opportunity to be a head coach in this league, right? The fact that he wanted this job, you and I both know that. I mean, he just took it, so we know that he wanted the job. But you and I knew it before. The fact that he wanted this job I do think has a lot to do with Cam Ward inheriting him as his quarterback. He knows, listen, anytime you get fired from a place, he got fired from the Jets, you're going to reflect on what went wrong and what you're hoping to have at your next stop, right? I'm sure he left New York saying, I wish it worked at quarterback, right? I wish we hit on Zach Wilson. I wish the Aaron Rodgers thing worked better, whatever. You learn from that. So him going into his second cycle of interviews, knowing this is your last chance, more than likely, certainly he said, I love that I don't have to worry about the quarterback situation in Tennessee. I believe in the quarterback that they have. He's a young guy. He's got to get better, but I'm very excited about the quarterback there. And then I get to the point of connecting with Mike Borgonzi, vibing with Mike Borgonzi. He wanted this job, a job that you and I have been told, a lot of people in the media say was not desirable due to the ownership situation. Amy Adams struck. Here is a retread candidate who is not just it's not Matt Nagy. It's a retread candidate that I think the media, teams around the league believe deserved a second opportunity. Here is that guy saying, I wanted this Tennessee Titans job. I think Cam Ward's probably got a lot to do with it.
And I think that matters. You want a guy that wants to be here. Was John Harbaugh, did he really want to be here, or was he using the Titans to get the best deal he could from the Giants? Same question, Kevin Stefanski. Same question about Jeff Hafley. We don't know. Maybe. It wouldn't have been their first choice, though, Tennessee. Tennessee, according to Diana Rossini and others, was always Robert Saleh's first choice, and I love that. So let's talk about the coordinator, because it does matter a lot. And you have to think, to sway Mike Borgonzi from his opinion about Matt Nagy, who reportedly he was ready to hire until Saleh walked into that building, you have to think his OC plan that he presented was good enough to be part of that swaying, part of that convincing. Because if it wasn't good enough, I don't think it would have got them there. Connor Orr, my friend, part of Heed the Call podcast, tweeted a note on Saleh regarding the Titans hire. I heard, excuse me, live show. I heard his OC plan was incredibly detailed, comprehensive, and team-specific, which likely eased concern for Tennessee. There's a ton of moving parts when it comes to the OC candidates this time of year, but he has a deeper well to access than most. Great news for Titans fans. Let's talk about some of the potential offensive coordinator candidates. Let's throw out some options, saving the one that it would be the dream hire. We'll save him for last. And talk about some options, because I would put them into tiers. I think like tier A, you've got Brian Daboll as a very good option. Tier B, I don't know. Mike LaFleur comes to mind as a potential Tier B option. Bobby Slowick, I could see the argument for Tier A, knowing what we know now about CJ Stroud. All those guys are interesting names that I think would be good hires. Is there anyone on the list, Justin, potential OCs that would excite you?
I would probably only put, if we're going Tier A, for example, I would probably only put Mike McDaniel and Brian Dable in Tier A. It's not to say Tier B, being in Tier B is a bad thing. There are a couple guys in Tier B that I would like to add that I really like. But I think Tier A, we've got to probably keep it to Mike McDaniel and Brian Dable because I believe they are a tier above the others. But in Tier B for me, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear every single name you said, but Bobby Slowick would be in Tier B for me. I would have Adam Stenovich, the current offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, in Tier B as well. And I would have Mike LaFleur, the Los Angeles Rams non-play calling offensive coordinator who was Saleh's coordinator with the Jets, in Tier B as well. I think those would be my top three in Tier B. I don't know that Frank Smith would be an option, but because he's coaching under McDaniel now, or was in Miami, there would be some familiarity with the offense between Coach Saleh and Coach Smith.
Yeah, I like those options. Another option that we can't just dismiss is Matt Nagy. I mean, it would be a little bit weird if you're the head coach to have your GM hire somebody to work for you that you know actively wants your job or wanted your job and tried to get your job, that you also know is best friends with that GM. It's not the best. It wouldn't be the most comfortable setup for Robert Saleh. He'd have to meet Nagy. He'd have to be on board with Nagy. P-Kegs, who you said had the dumbest comment of the day, Justin. Thank you for watching, P-Kegs, despite Justin, laying into you earlier. You can't have the runner-up work for the new head coach. Too much conflict of interest. Now, I'll point to Mike Vrabel and Matt LaFleur. I mean, it happened. Not only does it happen in Tennessee. We saw it happen. It was one season. I don't think the offense was particularly good, but LaFleur was a hot enough candidate that one season was enough to get him a head coaching job. But it did happen. I mean, that was essentially what happened. They only interviewed 3 candidates that entire cycle: Vrabel, LaFleur, and Steve Wilkes. And I think Matt LaFleur was definitely the runner-up to Vrabel, and they paired them together, and it was, I don't want to say fine, but it was fine, right?
Listen, I'm glad you brought up that example because I do think that that's the example of proof that it could work. Now, comment here, correct from Atlas, LaFleur and Vrabel did not like each other. They did not. But they made it work. They did make it work. They were professional. The team went 9-7. It wasn't a disaster, right? I think one of the big differences between that situation and this one, and I call me out if you think I'm wrong, but I think one of the big differences is that I think the Titans knew that LaFleur would eventually and quickly go get a job elsewhere. You know what I mean? And remember, here's a distinct difference that I think really matters. John Robinson, who helped oversee that decision, his tie was to Mike Vrabel. It wasn't to Matt LaFleur. Whereas this would be the opposite here. The GM would have the tie to the offensive coordinator. So I do think P. Kegs makes a good point in the sense that I think there's a bit more conflict to be worried about in the Nagy Saleh situation than compared to the Vrabel LaFleur one. And I don't necessarily think that, okay, I mean, maybe this is going to be stupid of me to say. I know LaFleur was interviewed for the Titans job, but again, I think the Titans had a lot of confidence that, he's a good OC for us, and he's going to go get a job elsewhere. I think there is a bit of a difference between the job that LaFleur wanted in Tennessee and the job that Nagy wanted in Tennessee this go around. Am I making sense? I think you do know what I'm saying. But specifically, I think the GM having the tie to Vrabel previously, I think that leads to a lot more, does a lot more to maybe eliminate the conflict of interest than it would this time around.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. We had to mention it. The possibility certainly exists
and
when
it's
the
still
GM.
Out there. They might still do it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The possibility certainly exists when the GM is best friends with the guy, and he just not stabbed him in the back, but left him out in the cold. After I'm sure he expected he had it in the bag. My buddy is making the hire. I got this in the bag, and credit to Borgonzi for not doing that. But we should talk about some other options because Clay Kubiak is an option, Justin. He's interviewing for head coaching candidates or for head coaching vacancies right now. Now, Kyle Shanahan was asked specifically, would you let Clay Kubiak out the building for a play calling promotion? And Shanahan said, look, he calls some of the plays here sometimes. He's not our play caller, but he does a lot. No, why would I let him go coordinate somebody else's offense when he's coordinating our offense? So I don't know. I'm actually unclear on this, Justin, because I know there was a recent rule change in the NFL to delineate between a non-play calling OC and having play calling duties, and that taking on play calling duties is seen as a promotion that a team wouldn't necessarily be able to block. But would Saleh do that to his friend Kyle Shanahan, steal his OC away? Maybe he would. It's a competitive sport, and Saleh's a competitor. Would Shanahan be able to stop him from taking Clay Kubiak if he wanted to?
I don't have clarity on this rule, in all honesty, at this time. But I imagine Shanahan has clarity. It seems strange for him to say that he would block if he knows that he can't block, unless he's just trying to get a public message out there and hope that people just take him at his word. But yeah, Kyle Shanahan said he does not intend on giving Clay, which, to be honest with you, is a DICK move, in my opinion, because you know that a guy has a better chance at getting a head coaching gig when he's is able to kind of fly on his own and be a play calling head coach, offensive coordinator. That's why Matt LaFleur came here to call plays. So for me, I think that was a really crappy move on Kyle Shanahan's part to say that, because as much as you love to hold on to a guy, head coaches are expected to make the non-selfish decision and support your career growth and embrace your opportunity. So for me, it was really incredibly strange that he just flat out said that.
And maybe he does have to give permission, because Dan Pitcher has been given permission by Zach Taylor of the Bengals to go interview for other offensive coordinator gigs, despite being the non-play calling offensive coordinator for Cincinnati. So who knows? Looks like we got another super chat in here from Tombo Brewster. Tighten up, Justin's. Keep browser small hidden from boss in London. Like the hire. Any chance you guys would ever have a Blue Sky presence? Probably not at this time, but maybe one day. Depending on, the direction Twitter continues to trend. Another candidate that we got a question about too, Nathan Scheelhaus. Would Nate Scheelhaus go somewhere he can call plays? I assume he would. I assume this is different because he is not the offensive coordinator of the Rams. No. He's the passing game coordinator. He has head coach interviews. If he doesn't get a head coaching job, though, I could see him being a potential option as well. Again, the pool is deep.
And then listen, when 10 coaches get fired the way they did this cycle, one of the benefits is there's a lot of quality coaches available, not just for offensive coordinator, for O-line coach, running backs coach, wide receivers coach. There are so many high-level quality assistants available this cycle that I'm looking forward to the type of staff Robert Saleh is going to put together, because I have a lot of faith in his ability and his connections around the league to put together a good staff. But Nate Scheelhaus, great call. And listen, Sean McVay can't block it, like you said, because he's a passing game coordinator. It would actually be a promotion to offensive coordinator. TBD, he's trying to go for these head coaching jobs. The Raiders, the Browns, he's in contention there. But certainly, I'd love to see him be an offensive. Now, the other possibility is if Mike LaFleur ends up getting a head coaching job, I'm sure the Rams are just going to promote Scheelhaus to offensive coordinator, but certainly he's a name to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Mike LaFleur is as well, although Mike LaFleur wouldn't excite me as much, and you wonder if he has trepidation about working with Saleh again, but it was, in that athletic story I mentioned earlier, it was stated that it wasn't Saleh's choice to fire LaFleur. It was forced upon him. All right, Justin, it's time for your favorite segment.
Oh, here we go.
McDaniel Watch! Today on McDaniel Watch, we have reason to believe that the dream is alive. It is not dead. Connor Hughes tweeted late last night after the hiring was announced. There was talk early on that Robert Saleh, had he gotten another head coaching opportunity, wanted to take Mike McDaniel with him as offensive coordinator, I'm told. The two work together in San Francisco, and Houston, by the way. We'll see if that happens. That would do wonders for the Titans. I agree, Connor. Ben Albright tweeted when he was asked, where does McDaniels end up? OC somewhere? And Ben Albright proceeded to make fun of this person. Josh McDaniels is already an OC. Did you mean Mike McDaniel? he has some head coach interviews, but many think he'll be an OC, possibly Tennessee with Saleh there. 2 national reporters suggesting the possibility that Mike McDaniel could take the job with Tennessee. Obviously, he's in contention for other jobs, but he's not the only one interviewing for the Bucs. He's not the only one interviewing in the Chargers. He's not the only one interviewing for the Eagles. We heard the Lions come out and say, we liked him, but we just didn't think he was the right fit for our offense. How many other teams are going to think that? How much back-channeling that we have no idea is happening, this is pure speculation, between 2 guys who are really good friends, in Saleh and McDaniel? How much is happening where they're talking about, hey, how cool would it be to team up? Like, Mike, you may not get that head coaching opportunity you wanted this year. Come coordinate for me. Come call my plays, and then I bet you can go get that head job again somewhere. Justin, I'm going to play 2 clips. Now, one of these clips is Robert Saleh talking about his friend Mike McDaniel, and the other one is Mike McDaniel talking about his friend Robert Saleh. If it feels like they're starting to drag, I will cut the clip off short because they are long clips, but let's just listen to them for a second. First, Robert Saleh talking about Mike McDaniel. This is when Saleh was head coach of the Jets and McDaniel was still head coach of the Dolphins.
So 2006, I was an intern, so technically I couldn't get fired yet, but my internship was about to die out by the end of February, and Kubiak and Kyle and Mike at the time, Mike, they all show up, the staff shows up, and we're in this massive staff room at the stadium, old Reliant Stadium, and it's just me and him sitting right across from each other, and since then we've been pretty darn close, and eventually that room added Matt LaFleur and Richard Hightower. So it was a really, really cool room, but initially it was just he and I, and had a lot of cool conversations and a lot of cool date nights with whoever he was with at the time, not his current wife, who's a beauty, but with my now wife. So it's we're very close. We're very close.
They're very close. Here's Mike McDaniel talking about Robert Saleh.
He was a squatter when he first got the job in Houston, which was hilarious. So I came with Gary Kubiak and Troy Calhoun, really, from the Broncos. And we, in Houston, what was then Reliance Stadium, we had like a office that, there was one guy in there when I got there. It was Robert Saleh, and he hadn't been terminated. He was, I think, working with Dom Capers before. He hadn't been terminated. I think he had like 2 more weeks of pay or something. So he did an excellent job of just forcing his hand and getting FaceTime with the head coach. Sat in there all week. I think I got there like on a Tuesday. And he just sat across from me in this awkward room like, hey, dude, you got a job? No, not really. Trying to see Gary Kubiak. And he just waited there until I think like Friday. Barged in and told him, hey, I'd really want to work for you. There's a lot of those stopgaps at the beginning of Robert Saleh's career. Always a sponge, always unbelievably smart. He's never been given anything, just like he wasn't given the job with Gary Kubiak in 2006. I think when he went to San Francisco in 2017, it was under the impression he would be the linebackers coach, and he asked to interview for the defensive coordinator spot. Long story short, he hasn't been given anything, and every time he's been given an op, he's taken advantage of it. So,
I mean, look, the time in Houston, obviously, that 2-week span, if you didn't catch what the context of that, the coaching staff in Houston was fired. Robert Saleh was an intern for that coaching staff. They hired Gary Kubiak, who worked with McDaniel in Denver, brought some of that staff over. They were filling out that staff in Houston, and Saleh just wouldn't go away. And clearly that moment was impressionable enough for both of them that they're both still remembering it and talking about it in press conferences years and years later. Obviously, 2 guys who are very close. I don't know if McDaniel would take this job over the weapons the Bucs have and the faster track to competition or whatever. But if Robert Saleh really liked this job, and he's really good friends with Mike McDaniel, and they've both been free agents, and you don't think they've talked at least off the record behind the scenes. They're really good friends about where they might end up, about what teams they like. You don't think Saleh said to McDaniel, have you watched Cam Ward? Man, this kid's incredible. Or, man, I think this kid could really be something. Or, I'm really intrigued and I'm excited to go work with him. I need somebody in here who can get the most out of him. What do you think? And Mike McDaniel's like, yeah, I think he could run my offense really well. I can't imagine what I'd put together for him. I don't think it's as unlikely as everyone said, and I've been saying this for weeks, Justin, that the only way to get McDaniel as OC is to hire Saleh, but I don't think it's as far-fetched as a lot of people believe that he would. Why would he take the Titans over the Bucks or the Chargers or the Eagles? Because the world is built on relationships, and he has a great relationship with Robert Saleh.
You hit the nail on the head, and I think now that the Lions job is not available, that's the only one that I could make a surefire argument that the Lions job, all those weapons, that's the smartest decision. Okay, now that he didn't get the Lions job, where he promised to take his shirt off, Saleh got hired. Now that he didn't get the Lions job, the offensive coordinator job, I think it becomes a lot more realistic that he wants to pair up with Robert Saleh. Look at some of the other jobs he interviewed for. Okay, listen. The Los Angeles Chargers, if I end up looking dumb, you can call me out on it and call me dumb, okay? Just like I called it with Borgonzi and McDaniel and Borgonzi and Saleh, I do not see Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel agreeing on the best way to run that offense for the Chargers. I don't think he's getting that Chargers OC job. They interviewed Arthur Smith and Brian. They've interviewed a ton of people for that job, not just McDaniel. Arthur Smith, Brian Callahan, Marcus Brady, Shane Day. They interviewed a ton of guys. Arthur Smith, to me, seems like a Jim Harbaugh guy. Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football, be tough, hard-nosed. That's not the Mike McDaniel vibe. I don't think it's going to get the Chargers job. That Eagles job, listen, a lot of, Nick Sirianni's a tough personality. They have rotated coordinators, 4 or 5 years in a row? At offensive coordinator. You also talk about what's going on with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I don't think that Philly offensive coordinator job is all that it's made out to be. And the Tampa job, they've got better weapons, but Todd Bowles does not have a lot of job security left there. I don't think that Tampa job's a home run. I think I'm not crapping on it. I think they're definitely a better football team, better chance to make the playoffs this year. But I don't think that OC job is a home run by any stretch of the imagination. I think the dream is alive. We've got 3 super chat tips that that we missed while you were playing the clips. I want you to take the first one specifically.
Okay, hang on. Let me talk about McDaniel and Tampa first, because there is a report out there that McDaniel would have sort of the assumption that if he does a good job, he could be Bowles' eventual successor if they decide to move on from Todd Bowles. But I also think what this comment says is true from Iron Grids. For McDaniel, turning a bad offense into a good offense is a better look than keeping a good offense good.
Very true.
If he takes over the Bucs offense and they're not good, for whatever reason, Baker doesn't take to the scheme, injuries, anything goes wrong, he's viewed as a failure. If the Titans offense is not good because you have a second-year quarterback and a bunch of, if they don't add the right weapons or whatever, then it's like, okay, the Titans offense doesn't have the personnel. McDaniel's not going to get the blame as much. The pressure to be good right away with the Bucs is a lot higher. And while it could be a faster track to getting back in a head coaching seat, it could also be a faster track to firing and never getting another chance as a head coach because of the pressure being so much higher there. So I think there is a chance that he would prefer to coach for Robert Saleh.
I agree. One of the things off the table we have to acknowledge, would he take the Raiders head coaching job? Probably. You're an offensive-minded guy. They've got the number 1 overall pick. They're about to draft Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. He's going to take the Raiders head coaching job. I think it's fair to wonder, would he take the Browns head coaching job over some of these offensive coordinator gigs? Maybe not. I don't think the Browns one is, that's a tough job based on where they're at. So TBD on that. But the Raiders head coaching job, I bet as of now, is probably his number 1 goal and wish. But if he doesn't get that gig, maybe the Titans OC job is number 2.
All right, those super chats. Woodrin the Pootie again with another chat, $4.99. Thank you so much. For those of us that aren't football minds, what schemes best suit our current quarterback and young talent? How does McDaniel fit with Ward? So McDaniel fits with any quarterback, first of all. Let's put that on the table, because McDaniel's the type of guy who sees something on tape for his opponent and figures out a way to take an advantage of it to a point where if they get the right look and they line up with the right play call, he can be on the sideline saying, I know already this is a touchdown. Or in the meeting rooms the week before preparing for the game and say, if we get this look, it's going for 50 yards. So he just provides an advantage that most offensive coordinators are not providing. I'll go back to the Mitchell Schwartz tweet that I read on the show last week, talking about how some guys understand play calls and why you run certain plays against certain defenses and understand why they work, but they're just pulling these concepts from other people's playbooks and building it together themselves. While the best offensive coordinators are innovators. They don't just understand why a certain concept works against a certain look, but they understand that if that look changes or the rules are different in order to catch the offense, the innovators understand how to counter that and how to continue innovating themselves. So that's number one, is that McDaniel provides something that a lot of people don't provide. And I have another Hard Knocks clip for McDaniel, but I'm not going to play it now. If he ends up being the hire, I'll play it. Talking about how people in general, and teaching the offensive skill players and linemen, everyone who's not the quarterback, teaching them the play calls. He has the quarterback record all the play calls so that the offensive players can listen back to their actual quarterback, reading off the play calls as they're studying their playbooks at home. Because as he said, the only person who reads the play call in the huddle is the quarterback. Everyone else is hearing it. It's a totally different experience studying the plays by reading them and then getting into the huddle and hearing someone else read it back to you. I just love the way he thinks. He's like solving problems. So anyway, I love him as a coordinator for that reason. Number two is his ability to create and attack space and attack deep. Cam Ward would best be suited in a deep vertical attacking system that reads deep to shallow rather than reading shallow to deep, because that's how his brain is wired, and it'll be easier for him to make and go through his progressions if he's already reading deep to shallow, because that's how he's programmed to want to play. And I think Brian Callahan and the Titan staff was trying to reprogram him to read shallow to deep, take what the defense gives you, take the easy underneath stuff. And of course he needs to do that. But McDaniel schemes that stuff up in a way that I think it'd be easier for Cam Ward to read. He also incorporates RPOs, which we know Cam Ward is great at RPOs. He is a brilliant run game designer, which takes pressure off of any quarterback, obviously, having a good run game. Now, some of the quick timing stuff, one of my favorite things that McDaniel talks about is how you don't have to be exactly on time in the quick game. You have to be on time in the sense that if your guy breaks free, throw the ball. Or if you are a hair late, if you have more torque and you can fire the ball into a tighter window, you can be on time without being on time. Like, these are the things he talks about. So the fact that he understands how the game is actually played, not just the on-paper design of it, but how to react in the moment, I think there's a million reasons to love Mike McDaniel as the potential offensive coordinator. And every reason that you were scared of him as a head coach, you can throw out the window because he's not a head coach. I literally don't see a drawback to him being the OC. And just Robert Saleh needs someone who's going to lead that side of the ball entirely, and McDaniel can do that because he also does have the head coaching experience. This one's for you.
I knew you'd nail that answer. That's why I wanted you to take the first one, and I'll take the second one. Thank you for being a good sport, PKegs 6. I still love you, Melo. Sorry if I went a little too hard on you, but that comment got my blood boiling because I vehemently disagreed with it. But I appreciate you being a good sport, sticking around for the stream, the super chat tip, the friendly banter, the back and forth. That's really the design of these live streams, as we've already been here an hour and a half. That's why we do them. We love having you guys here. So really, thanks a lot for being a good sport. And Walmart Man 31, I think this might be his third super chat tip of the stream. Thank you so much, Walmart Man 31. If the McDream becomes a reality, I'll get a Titans tattoo, I believe that says. You know what? I want to see it happen now, just so you've got to get the tattoo. I want more details on the tattoo. Is it Mike McDaniel's face on your bicep? Is it on your lower back? Is it one of Mike McDaniel's quotes, like one of those inspirational quotes on the inside of your ribs? I want to know what the Mike McDaniel tattoo entails. You cannot provide too much detail. I want to know it all.
Still talking about coordinators. That was Mike McDaniel Watch. McDaniel Watch is back. We're excited. He is interviewing with Cleveland on Wednesday for the head job. So we'll see. We'll wait to hear how that goes. Alex5510 says, hopefully he keeps Fossil as special teams coordinator. And Ray School says early indications are that Fossil will be retained. I do think that's going to happen. I think Bones Fossil is going to be the special teams coordinator I don't really think we need to talk about it because I think it's going to happen. Justin, are there any defensive coordinators? First of all, how much do you care? Because we know Saleh is going to be calling the plays. And are there any names you want to throw out there before we get to the last thing I want to talk about and wrap this up? Because, yes, we are just about to hit 90 minutes here.
No, I don't think it matters a ton who the defensive coordinator is going to be. Like I said, I think it's very similar to like a Nick Holtz to a degree. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the big ones, a huge get for the Titans would be, and I'm going to butcher the name. You know who I'm talking about. Chris Kachurek, the defensive line coach for the San Francisco 49ers. He's only 47 years old. He's long been known as one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL. And here's something that was interesting. He was with the Dolphins in 2018. He joins the 49ers in 2019. He's only ever been a position coach. Now, you're probably not going to be able to poach him away from Kyle Shanahan for the same role. And you probably wouldn't want to make him a defensive coordinator unless you were the one calling plays, right? Because you are the one calling plays, I think there's a good possibility that you look at someone like that. So that's one of my favorite ones would be Chris Kachurek. I'm not so sure on a ton of names here. I do have a list that I compiled. If you take over for a little bit, I could access the list and kind of refresh my memory on some of the others.
Yeah, I think, there was a lot of talk early in this process about Raheem Morris and Jonathan Gannon being interviewed as potential DC candidates. I think it's way more likely one of those guys ends up in San Francisco calling plays for Kyle Shanahan's defense than it is they end up as Robert Saleh's non-play calling defensive coordinator. I definitely would put my money on one of the younger, a position coach somewhere. You know what they should do, Justin? Go pluck somebody off Seattle's staff. I don't care if you know them or don't know them. Mike McDaniel and Seattle are changing the way NFL defenses play football. Go get their defensive line coach or their cornerbacks coach or their linebackers coach and bring them in. I'm not saying make him defensive coordinator. Maybe make him defensive coordinator. But get one of those guys in the building, or at least give him like a run game coordinator or a pass game coordinator title. I don't even know the guys I'm talking about. I just want somebody with insight into Mike McDaniel's process to come share ideas with the Robert Saleh staff. Is that crazy?
Tony Oden, by the way, current Titans, the defensive backs coach, also works with Robert Saleh with the Jets. So that's a name to keep in mind. Maybe just to be retained on the staff. I don't know about defensive coordinator. But here's a name that I'll throw out there. This is why I wanted to access my notes. There was one that I couldn't remember that I think could garner strong consideration. And that is current New York Giants defensive backs coach, Marquand Manuel. This is a guy who played in the NFL. He was a safety. He got drafted in the 6th round, played collegiately at Florida, University of Florida, was there for a long time, ends up going 6th round in the NFL draft. He was Robert Saleh's safeties coach the whole time Saleh was with the Jets, 2021 to 2024. And he does have previous defensive coordinator experience. I think he was a little green when he got his first opportunity. He was with the Atlanta Falcons in 2017 and 2018 as their defensive coordinator. So he's got previous experience. He was with Robert Saleh for a bunch of seasons with the Jets, and he's probably going to be available because he was on the Giants staff. Now that they've hired Harbaugh, I imagine they're going to be cleaning house. And you want to talk about how impressive that Marquand Manuel might be. When he got that job in Atlanta, who hired him as defensive coordinator? It was Dan Quinn with the Falcons who gave him that first defensive coordinator opportunity, who was also on that Falcon staff. Raheem Morris was the assistant head coach, worked directly with Marquand Manuel. And by the way, Jeff Ulbrich was the linebackers coach that year, who Robert Saleh eventually poaches to be his defensive coordinator. So I think Marquand Manuel is probably a strong candidate to be the defensive coordinator with the Titans.
Let's keep that name in mind. And now, Justin, we're going to move on to our last topic. I swear this was pre-planned, and the comments are starting to I don't know, point like they're starting to find it. They're starting to find where we're going. Sniff out. That's what I was trying to say. The comments are starting to sniff out where we're going next. To transition us to our final topic, I'm going to play a video. If you're just listening to us on audio, that was, of course, the Robert Saleh meets Liam Coen at midfield after the Jags-Niners game earlier this season. Let's not forget how this started. Robert Saleh went into a press conference and talked about how Liam Coen's Jaguars were really good at legal sign stealing. Now, Liam Coen did not take very kindly to those comments and had some words to say in his press conference. They meet on the field, and Coen says, "Keep my name out of your mouth," like Will Smith at the Oscars, to Robert Saleh, who says, "I will F up your world." Robert Saleh has come into the division with Liam Coen, ready to F up his world. And there is more background to this, Justin, that I didn't even realize until Peter Schrager tweeted about it last night. When Liam Coen was hired in Jacksonville, it was down to him and Saleh as the two finalists. And they spent hours interviewing both of them, much like what happened yesterday with Tennessee between Nagy and Saleh. But last year, Saleh lost to Liam Coen. He was the other finalist, and the Jags picked Liam Coen over him. Then all this drama unfolds in season, the week that they play each other. Now we're going to get that drama twice a year, hopefully for many, many years to come, because they're going to be playing in the same division. I think this is the most fun, exciting part of the hire. Some real juice brought back to this rivalry, just like what we're seeing with Chicago and Green Bay, getting some real juice brought back. I don't think Titans-Jags is going to make it that far on a national level because people simply don't care about this team as much, but it's going to be really fun. I cannot wait for the first Titans-Jags game this next season.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun that this happened, and then now that they're both coaching in the AFC South, I don't have a ton to add other than it's going to be, as the comment said, a spicy meatball type of rivalry. You know Robert Saleh is going to want that game really bad at the first one against Jacksonville in 2026. Someone said, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets prime time. I honestly, I feel the same. Patrick, I wouldn't be shocked if it gets the prime time either, especially, Cam Ward going into his second year. Titans did not have the prime time, a single prime time game this past year. So no, wouldn't surprise me at all if they put this one in the classic Jacksonville Titans Thursday night football slot.
Yeah, totally agree. So that's going to be really fun. That's pretty much all we had. I mean, all we had. We've only been talking for 96 minutes. I'll answer one other question that I saw. Does the Rams still being in the playoffs mean the Titans would have to wait to announce if they wanted Shieldhouse or LaFleur as OC? Yes. They will not be able to announce that or make a hire there until the Rams are eliminated or win the Super Bowl. And the other interesting part, offensive coordinator has its own Rooney Rule. You must interview 2 minority candidates for your offensive coordinator position. They do not have to be in person, can be in person or virtual. And I believe the quarterback's coach also, or is it just position coaches in general, also you have to interview a minority candidate, one for each of your position coaches. Is that right?
I don't know that. I don't know that to be true. I know for the offensive and defensive coordinator positions, I don't know if that's the case with the. I know.
Keep
Zach
talking.
Lyons,
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, Zach Lyons had a tweet on it this morning regarding the minority rules for the offensive and defensive coordinator candidates. It does say the QB coach has to be one external candidate. So that's interesting. So one external Rooney Rule candidate. Very interesting. I don't know why. What's the difference between the QB coach and the running back coach? I don't know why they get that treatment only.
My point is, this isn't going to happen today or tomorrow. Like, they have to go through an interview process now. They have to fulfill these obligations to the league and be compliant with all the rules before they can hire a offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. But I don't know, can they just promote Bones? I don't know. They might have to fake an interview process to keep Bones too. These are the questions that will be answered in the coming days. Can't wait for Saleh to speak at his introductory press conference. To my knowledge, the Titans haven't announced when that will be yet. We are finishing up this stream here at 11:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, and I think that's going to do it for us. Justin, did you have anything else to hit before we say goodbye? This was a long one, but what a thorough look at Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Tennessee Titans.
Our buddy South Texas Titans. Titans regretted breaking up with Vrabel and got with Saleh. That's the way to do it. They realized the first replacement was a ginormous mistake. And you go back to your ex. That was, let me get a type that was a little closer to my ex. Thank you so much for everyone who joined the stream. This has been a lot of fun. The Titans have a new head coach, Robert Saleh, one that we have a lot of faith in. Cannot wait for the coming days. Looking forward to the introductory press conference, seeing the staff come together. Great point. Yes, Bones is under contract So technically, you don't have to interview anyone for that job if you don't want to, because he's under contract. It only happens when you fire and you have an opening at those positions that you have to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So no, if they keep Bones, they just got to keep Bones. They don't have to interview anyone for that role if they don't want to. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know for sure what we're talking about, but it's probably going to be something to do with the Tennessee Titans hiring Robert Saleh, a.k.a. Bobby Salsa, as their new head coach. We will be back tomorrow. We loved having you guys here. Thank you so much for joining the stream. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.